So today's topic is retrofitting of the existing structures in India for earthquake-resistant design. So when we talk about retrofitting of the existing structures, indeed it's a very vast area. So today we are going to focus only from the perspective of earthquake-resistant design. And just before 1 month, we arranged a live discussion related to the earthquake in Turkey, and we are planning a couple of more sessions on the same based on the learning from the failures of the structures. But meanwhile, we have started receiving the question like how safe the structures in India from the perspective of earthquake resistant design, right? And again, when we look at the diversified structures, this question will require very detailed discussion. But at least we will try to answer some of the question in today's session. So today, Ms. Sangeeta Veej will join with us shortly. She's graduated in 1982 and worked in rights before starting her own consultancy firm in 1996. So right now she's a managing partner in ST Engineering Consultants LLP, and the firm has completed over 1,000 prestigious structural engineering assignments for a large number of metro stations, hospitals, schools, commercial, residential, industrial projects, etc. And the company is also involved in audits of commercial, residential, and industrial clients as well. Okay. So before we start further, just let me make a small announcement that we have just launched a unique online course related to design of connections for steel structures as per Eurocode 3, AISC 36022, and IS 800 2007. The course will commence from 10th May 23. So for more details, you can refer the link which is mentioned on the screen. Okay, so let's get started now. Hello.
Hello.
Sangeeta ji. Yeah.
Anji, good evening.
Yeah, very
Thank
good
you
evening.
for bringing me here.
Yeah.
I'm also happy to be a part of any such lecture program.
Yes.
And hi, everybody, whoever is listening and is logged in. Welcome to this discussion, which is more like a live discussion. And we really encourage you to post your questions and
Yes.
any queries. Technical audit and retrofitting is not rocket science. It just requires us to follow the basic design principles that we follow for any new building design and compare the strength existing and required before we come up with a strengthening scheme. I keep giving example of a human body, and I think any building is like human body where any ailment has to be diagnosed, and uh, sometimes we have to carry out some testing to come up with the diagnosis and the right treatment. So I'll just briefly take you through the slides, and uh, I will not spend too much time on the presentation. However, if there is any question, please feel free to post it. I already have received a long list of queries and questions. I'll be
Yes.
able to answer, I'll be happy to answer as many as we can handle today.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Sure.
So let's start
Yeah.
with the presentation now. So, why the need for a technical audit and how to carry out a comprehensive technical assessment? And basically, we are covering these 5 or 6 points today. Why the need for a technical audit, how to carry out a comprehensive technical assessment, methodology for audit, what are the documents needed, what are the non-destructive testing procedures available, and what are the retrofitting options. So, we need technical audit because with age, the buildings lose strength and there are visible signs of distress. Also, there are changed loading conditions sometimes due to change in land use or additions, alterations carried out by the owners. And some of these structural elements may, in the process, get damaged. And there are revisions of IS 1893 and 13920, our duct, earthquake resistant design code and ductility design code. And 95% of the existing structures may be now non-compliant after 2016 codes came in. So there is a need to review the compliance aspect and carry out an audit and retrofit if required. Then there may be a need to upgrade from collapse prevention design to immediate occupancy design or even operational category. For important building structures, the owners may place a demand on the structural engineer to upgrade earthquake safety. It's also felt that neither architects or clients nor some of our own structural engineers are aware that regular geometry clauses are there in BS 1893 Part 1, telling us that regular buildings definitely perform better in earthquakes, and we must follow the guidelines as far as possible while planning the geometries of the buildings, especially in high seismic zones. Irregular geometries often result in poor performance, as has been proven even in our last experience of a major earthquake in Turkey and Syria. So, in fact, in National Building Code, there is a requirement in the chapter 2. It's written that there is in chapter 2 of National Building Code on administration, there is a clause 14.4.2 which reads like this, that all buildings must be subjected to periodic inspection by a team of multidisciplinary professionals of local authority. The work by a team of professionals may be outsourced by the authority to competent professionals as may be deemed necessary. The team shall ensure compliance of bylaws, natural lighting, ventilation, etc., besides structural safety for designated public buildings and areas. And this inspection shall usually be uh, carried out every 3 to 5 years, and in any case, not more than 5 years. Now, it clearly says that the authority can give a time frame for getting the retrofitting done, and they are within their powers to seal the building unless the retrofitting is done within that period and the building can be declared unsafe or unfit. This is a clause which is meant for all our local authorities across India to be followed. And we all know that this clause has a far reaching impact. If followed diligently, it can actually lead to a much safer built environment for all of us. And further in clause 12.2.5.1, it also defines the kind of buildings which are covered in the previous clause. Buildings, all buildings which are more than 15 meters in height and are for special buildings like educational, assembly, institutional, business, mercantile, industrial, storage, and hazardous, and mixed occupancies. So practically it covers all kinds of buildings. So this is the reason why we should do technical audits. What are the documents required for an audit? Architectural plans and elevations, if available, all structural drawings. Normally, these are never available for older buildings. Structural analysis and design model in StatPro or ETABS. Normally, with our experience, we've seen that it's impossible to locate this, especially for structures which are existing, even 10 to 15 years old. We are never able to locate the analysis or design model in StatPro or ETABS. Then it's important to look at the soil report and the groundwater test report, and a preliminary site inspection report is necessary for any observed tilting or bulging or unequal settlement deflections or cracks or seepages. So basically, structural engineers are so why, what I was saying is that supposing we do not have structural drawings, we can create the approximate structural framing and reinforcement drawings using suitable NDT techniques. We'll talk about them a little later. We can use rebar scanning to create the reinforcement profile. However, there is a limitation because we can't do rebar scanning of all the beams and all the columns. So, which are the problems frequently encountered when we are doing a technical audit? The first problem is that there is no awareness about clients, about quantum of risk involved in continuing with a old and dilapidated structure. He's not aware what kind of risk is he facing, and he's worried, that he will have to go through a lot of disruption in his normal routine. Building will need to be opened up, structure will need to be, partly broken up to create suitable space for retrofitting. So he's more worried, more anxious, and more worried about the money part also. Now, the biggest problem is non-availability of documents. And typically, RWA, the members can't agree on paying for a comprehensive audit, and they usually prefer hiring a vendor straight away. Maybe, the most popular thing is to hire a vendor for fiber wrapping or concrete jacketing or steel jacketing and just get the retrofitting done. Now, clients often ask for a stability certificate even for part floors. This is the biggest problem we are facing, biggest challenge that most of my friends and some of my BNI chapter members call and say that, okay, I live in a floor in a particular housing development, and can you please audit and retrofit my floor? Now, that is unfortunately not feasible. considering that as a structural engineer, I must get to see the whole building in totality, the entire structure, maybe comprising of 4 floors, maybe having 30, 40, 50 floors and let's say 200 flats. So the whole building structure has to be modeled and then audited. We can't do a part floor or we can't do just one floor. Similarly, clients often believe, or everyone else, but the structural engineers. Recently, there was some condominium, luxury condominium in Bengaluru, which came down because the Vastu consultant, it seems, told the client to remove one central column in his ground floor flat as part of the renovation that they were carrying out. They pulled down a column and the entire condominium of about 30, 40 flats came down. Then the frequent problem is corrosion, which is inside a structure and may be growing unnoticed. Cracks are sometimes visible, but usually they are just finished off with plaster, grouting, and are painted. So, as a routine maintenance in India, typically we do painting, polishing once a year or once every 2 years, and the cracks are kind of hidden, and cracks are not investigated further. So I think structural engineers work. Structural engineer has to, check. Bhavin, I'm running into a little problem here. I can't read the last part of my slide because I'm seeing this
Yeah.
message here.
Seventh,
Can I
seventh
remove
point.
that?
Seventh point.
Yeah. Can you read it out?
Yeah, sure. It says that structural engineers' shoddy design work is almost never detected till it's too late and leads to damage failure as there is no checking before construction and even afterwards unless audits are done at regular intervals.
Yes. So how do I get rid of this message that I'm seeing at the bottom of my screen? It's
Um,
slides, video file, and share screen.
okay.
How do
Okay.
I go back?
Okay.
Okay, so how to carry out a comprehensive technical assessment? Study the available information, including architectural and structural drawings, soil report, water test report, analysis design model on StatPro or ETABS. I'm hoping that all these things are available. If the above are not available, we need to carry out measurement at site to identify the structural system and create a structural framing plan with the beam, column, and shear wall sizes. Next, we use rebound hammer or core cutting tests to establish average compressive strength of concrete in beams, slabs, columns, and foundations. And after that, we use NDT techniques like rebar scanning to find the reinforcement details and create a set of structural drawings. And sometimes, if the drawings are available, it's like a bonus for you and for the client because then this rebar scanning can be avoided. Otherwise, we have to create reinforcement drawings for the existing building before the modeling can be taken up as a next step. So we create a model in StatPro or ETABS. However, the base shear to be used for earthquake can be reduced depending on the age of the building as laid down in BIS 15988. The reduction factor can vary between zero point 0.7 to 1, depending on how old your building is, how is the availability of documents, how reliable are the drawings and documents available, and so on. And next, it's important to note here that for the analysis and design, we always use the revised current seismic codes and not the older versions of the code. Some clients might tell you that my building was done in 1990, so why don't you check it with the 1990 code, or code which was prevalent at that time. But that is not the correct procedure. If we go through 15988, it's very clearly laid down that all audits have to be carried out uh, with the latest revision of the earthquake codes. All we are allowed to do is to use the modification factor as per 15988. So after the modeling is done, we compare the demand of the structure with the existing available information, whether the available column sizes and beam sizes are adequate, first of all, and then we compare the reinforcements. And after we create a comparison, we create a detailed report which shows the demand versus available strength. And then we present it to the client so that he is aware of the deficit uh, in each structural element. Based on the deficit, based on how much is the gap, we then look at the retrofitting options, and then we devise the most optimum retrofit solution. So we have already talked about the NDT techniques available briefly. We do core cutting to test the concrete strength. We do rebar scanning, where reinforcement is to be determined. We do half cell potential test to check for possibility of corrosion. Then UPV for checking integrity of the concrete in general within columns, beams, and slabs. Then rebound hammer can also be used where the client is not allowing you to do core cutting. However, the results are not as accurate or reliable as core cutting results. Then we also do carbonation and chloride test for concrete where we have doubt of coming across corrosion. And for steel structures, we can check we can take samples of steel and test its strength, and also test the weld quality. And for strengthening, we have, we start with simple techniques like graniting or pressure grouting for masonry structures and abutments. And for concrete, we can use concrete jacketing for moment frame structures. We can also do steel jacketing or carbon fiber wrapping, or provide bracings on peripheral walls while treating inner columns as gravity columns, where, in those buildings where the client does not want you inside his building, which can be a functional industry or a functional hospital or whatever. So it is possible to treat a building only from the outside and create additional structural elements which will be designed to carry all the earthquake shear or the additional earthquake shear, which the structure is not able to take. We can also provide dampers and add base isolation systems. And we can also add shear walls if client allows you to do that. And in one of the projects that we had seen on Dwarka Expressway, we had to use sacrificial anodes to tackle acute corrosion status. So basically, I'm going to talk only till this point here. But I also want to show you quickly in just next 2 minutes as to what do we mean by collapse prevention or immediate occupancy or operational status. So world over, the earthquake safety of buildings is of 4 categories. The highest is fully operational as practiced and adopted in Japan and LA and New Zealand and other developed nations. And next, lower is immediate occupancy, then comes life safety, and then comes collapse prevention. So, our code in India had started off with collapse prevention. Uh, I mean, we were a poor country when we started talking in terms of earthquake resistant design way back in early 80s. But now the code is being revised to upgrade the safety slowly to higher levels. And this is how these 4 levels look. And it should give you some idea. This is where our collapse prevention design is. Mostly where the building will not have any reserve strength after a major earthquake has happened. And it will be compulsory for the owner to dismantle and build again. It'll just give you enough time to evacuate the near and dear ones. So now, Bhavin, I would like to start with the questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the first question I would like to take. I have this Ujma Khan from LPU. So she's talking, it's a she or he, I don't know. Ujma can be a girl or a boy. So, Ujma, it is important to understand that no technique can be, prescribed for all the buildings. No one solution can fit all the buildings. Depending on your project, depending on the requirement that the client has, whether it's concrete or steel, whether it's a functional building or a non-functional building, we have to decide on the strategy that we are proposing. Then also, we can't just say कि मुझे तो concrete jacketing ही करना है. ऐसा नहीं होता. We have to evaluate the available options. We may like to give client an option of concrete jacketing or steel jacketing if he is allowing us to enter the building and do this treatment to his structural elements. But if this option of going inside is not at all available, then we have to work from outside and maybe look at giving dampers or bracings or adding shear walls externally. So cost sometimes is not the only criteria to consider because I must share with you that the retrofitting involves double costs. Not just the cost of retrofitting, but it also involves the cost of breaking open and making good. I think सभी structural engineers को ये language समझ में आती है कि आप अगर कुछ बनाने वाले हैं नया, उसके लिए आपको पुराना कुछ तोड़ना पड़ेगा. जैसे आपको कॉलम के अराउंड जगह क्रिएट करनी है, तो आपको आसपास की दीवारें तोड़नी पड़ेंगी थोड़ी-थोड़ी, ताकि जैकेटिंग के लिए जगह बने. सिमिलरली फ्लोरिंग और फॉल सीलिंग भी निकालनी पड़ेगी और एक्सटर्नल पेरिफेरी पे कॉलम्स हैं तो आपकी विंडोज और इवन इंटरनल डोर्स may need to be removed, resized and then fitted again. So the cost that a client incurs is not just the retrofitting cost, it includes breaking open and making good, which is sometimes even a higher cost than the retrofitting cost itself. तो जो टेक्निक हम कंसिडर कर रहे हैं वो तो retrofitting technology has to be devised according to the deficit in strength, but the total cost is going to be much more. तो जो कंसल्टेंट का काम है वो बहुत डाइसी होता है इसके अंदर. आपको बैलेंस करना पड़ता है कि आप एग्जैक्टली ऑप्टिमम सॉल्यूशन है क्या. It's not a very easy way out. Next, Alok has asked Alok Rathore from CSIR how to incorporate jacketing in modeling. It's possible to do this in ETABS to increase the size, assume an increased size, and then run it again. With the increased size of concrete, you may opt for higher mix of concrete, and you may be adding reinforcement in one layer. So that can be modeled in ETABS, and then you can run the retrofitted version of the building and see what level are you achieving. Because in many projects that we have worked on, we were required to achieve immediate occupancy level after retrofitting, especially the project that we did with NDMA on the World Bank. So it's possible to work it out in ETABS, and if there's any problem, you can send me an email and we can take it on a one-to-one level. Then Gopal has said, Gopal from Nanded has said, can we form checklist for condition assessment of existing structure? Yes, the checklist can be made. I think I've covered most of the points. You can create a checklist, and if there's any help you need from us, we are available. Of course, at a price. Just kidding. Then Nisarg says from RV Associates, why we increase SBC in earthquake case as per IS code? Well, SBC increase is allowed in table 1 of 1893 part 1. And if our soil report agrees, if you have, for example, a medium soil, then we should go ahead and do it. For a medium soil, you can go in for a 25% increase, and if the soil is hard and we can take 50% increase, I don't think there is any problem in doing that. If you want to ask anything further, Nisarg, you can ask now. Otherwise, I think we should just follow the code. But if the soil is a filled up soil or black cotton or has very poor SBC, then we should not, we should forego the increase and pick the time period accordingly. The SA by G table has to be followed for the soft soil. Then Ankit Patel has a question from Pune. He's from Star Buildings. He says, though these structures are designed as per Codal provisions, but how to ensure any malpractices happen during construction for structural audit, especially for the substructure. देखिए अंकित, हम मैल प्रैक्टिसेस की यहाँ बात नहीं कर रहे हैं, हम सिर्फ ये बात कर रहे हैं कि स्ट्रक्चरल ऑडिट में हमें क्या करना चाहिए. कंस्ट्रक्शन में क्या हुआ है, मैल प्रैक्टिसेस हुई हैं या नहीं हुई हैं, वो एनडीटी के थ्रू पता चल जाती हैं. ड्राइंग में M35 लिखा है, मगर एक्चुअल कंक्रीट की स्ट्रेंथ कितनी है आप एनडीटी से पता कर सकते हैं, तो उसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. वी आर ओनली फोकसिंग ऑन द ऑडिट from a structural designer's perspective. I don't think our domain extends to the construction malpractices, at least for today's webinar. Then there is Ajay Jitendra Bhai from Surat. He wants to know retrofitting methodology and analysis and design in all structure. I think we've already covered that. Engineer Sitaram Agarwal ji says, how do we attempt retrofit for earthquake unauthorized buildings in Lal Dora areas, comprising of 5 stories and above, catering to masses? Agarwal Sahab, वो retrofitting मांग ही नहीं रहे हैं. They are happy. doing what they are doing and they are happy living the way they are living. अनऑथोराइज्ड है, आधी ईंट पे 5-5 मंजिल की बिल्डिंग खड़ी कर ली है उसने, तो उसकी रेट्रोफिटिंग कैसे होगी? उसको रेट्रोफिट करने के लिए तो बहुत दिमाग लगाना पड़ेगा, आपको टेस्टिंग भी करानी पड़ेगी। आई थिंक उसमें आई थिंक सबसे मोटा जो काम है वो यही है कि उसको आप ग्रेनाइटिंग करा सकते हैं और कॉन्टिन्यूअस लिंटल बैंड एक प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं और ओपनिंग्स के आसपास हॉरिजॉन्टल और वर्टिकल रीइंफोर्समेंट लगा सकते हैं without going into too much detail or without doing any sophisticated technical audit. Then we have Madhusudan from Hyderabad. He says economical procedure to strengthen old load-bearing wall structure. I have already spoken about that. Now, I mean just now. Then Mohammad Alamgir Hashmi from New Delhi. He says we'll be discussing the earthquake in Turkey crisis. Well, we have already covered Turkey crisis in the earlier webinar hosted by Indian Association of Structural Engineers, where I was also part of the panel, but the main panelist was a professor from Turkey, and he had covered in detail his findings on the earthquake, you know, the flaws, the reasons, the possible reasons, and everything was covered in detail. If you wish, Bhavin can share there is a recording available. Bhavin can share it with you.
Sure.
Main reason found by them is also lack of compliance to building codes. And for whatever reason, our structural engineers do not follow the earthquake code and decide to flout it, it is not advisable. कोई भी compulsion हो, I think we should stick to the code and try to give the client a code compliant design. Then Shivam Kumar Sharma from Awadh Consulting Services. Bhavin, I'm not able to see his question here.
Yeah, he has just only written retrofitting. So this already we have discussed.
Retrofitting के लिए तो हमने बात कर ली है.
Yeah, the
Then there
last
is
point is
vested,
also seismic retrofitting of structures. That also we have discussed. So we can move to
that
next.
also we discussed. Yeah. So then there is Girija from Chennai, from DAC Developers. She says how to ensure if building is basically safe for earthquake. I've already told you, just evaluate, model it as you model a new building. Depending on the age, use a modification factor. Now compare it with the earlier available strength. We have to work out the demand as if it's a new building. Use a modification factor if it's 10, 15, 20, 30 years old. And if we are not sure, evaluate the concrete strength. So now when we are modeling and running it as per revised codes, use the strength you have found through NDT tests and use a modification factor. Now find out the gap and design a retrofitting scheme. So Sujata Unnikrishnan from Bangalore says, kindly discuss case studies, failure of structures and remedial measures. I think I can show some case study at the end if we still manage to have some time. I would like to cover all the questions first. Sujata, we'll come back to this. Then Ashwin says, Ashwin from Jalgaon says, brief explanation of earthquake resistant structure. भाई brief explanation of earthquake resistant structure तो बड़ा आसान है. ये आपका बिल्डिंग है और earthquake आने से मान लीजिए ये बिल्डिंग हिल रही है. अब आपको टाइम पीरियड डिटरमिन करना है, बिल्डिंग का मॉडल क्रिएट करना है और उसके बाद ये बिल्डिंग डिफ्लेक्ट होने के बाद अर्थक्वेक में वापस आ जाए सही सलामत, वो earthquake resistant design है structure का. So basically our effort is to make sure that there is neither too much deflection or nor too much discomfort in a deflecting building, and the building safely comes back to its original position without cracking, without the joints opening up. That is why we do ductile detailing, so that joints stay true to themselves and joints stay ductile. Okay, I think Ashwin, I have explained what you wanted. Perhaps if you're not happy, you can write back to me. Akash Solanki from Ahmedabad says, can we discuss creating a newer system of building approvals? ये आज की discussion में नहीं आने वाला है, boss. Building approvals, where queries regarding solutions provided in terms of structural arrangements, codal requirements, and those executed on site, along with photographs, need to be documented at the time of government approval of buildings. That ensures new buildings are following or exceeding the codal requirements. My God. Akash, your question is definitely a very intelligent question, but unfortunately, you're born in a wrong country, boss. इंडिया में ये सब होता नहीं है. जब बिल्डिंग अप्रूवल होता है, मुझे नहीं पता अहमदाबाद में क्या हो रहा है, पर दिल्ली एनसीआर में तो जब नई बिल्डिंग अप्रूव होती है, स्ट्रक्चरल इंजीनियर तो तब तक अपॉइंट भी नहीं होता है. आर्किटेक्ट सिर्फ एक स्ट्रक्चरल इंजीनियर का सर्टिफिकेट लगा देता है कि जिसमें हम लिख देते हैं कि भाई ये हम आईएस कोड के हिसाब से काम करेंगे. दैट्स इट. गवर्नमेंट अप्रूवल कहाँ होता है? कौन स्ट्रक्चर चेक करता है हमारा कि हमने क्या डिजाइन किया है? We are very unfortunately in a scenario where structural design of building as a routine is not being checked at the authority level at all. That is why my emphasis is on technical audit. कि कोई ऑडिट करेगा तो पता चलेगा कि बिल्डिंग आपकी सही डिजाइन है या नहीं है. And I think what you just stated is a wishful scenario. I wish it happens someday. Rashad bin Abuba, yes, from Kozhikode. He's from A&N Structural Consultants, Calicut, Kerala. He says retrofitting cold form structure. Retrofitting cold form steel structure may be a bit dicey. We've not done anything so far on this. Bhavin, would you like to talk about it? Because the thicknesses are very small,
very yes,
and it's a very lightweight kind of structure. So retrofitting may be a bit more challenging than retrofitting a normal steel structure.
absolutely.
भाविन, आप इसमें कुछ कह सकते हैं, please?
No, absolutely right. So I think if there is the problem of corrosion, then the only option is we need to replace the member.
Right, yeah. We are doing that. In fact, we had recently audited a very large steel roofing in one of the import-export buildings in Delhi Cargo Terminal. So all the sheet was corroded, and some of the purlins were also corroded. So there was no option but to replace that kind of structure completely. But usually the cost involved is pretty high, so client kind of shies away from doing it for as long as he can hold it. So
Yes.
So now Abhishek says,
How to make sure that our understanding of the exact reason for the failure after the structure has collapsed. So it's talking about forensic investigation for structures.
So that's interesting question. It brings me to a statement that I would love to make कि इंडिया में कोई failures को study करता नहीं है. इंडिया में we like to brush our faults under any carpet that we can find, and we don't want to talk about it, and nobody wants to talk about it. In fact, in a recent major failure that happened in North India, In our association, I was under a lot of pressure for not discussing it in my committee, professional issues committee, because a lot of people had sympathy with the structural designers, and in any other country that you are in, the Association of Engineers, Structural Engineers comes forward, studies the available data and information, and the tests are carried out on failed elements to determine as closely as possible the reason for failure. पर हमारे यहाँ ऐसा नहीं होता है हिंदुस्तान में बॉस. एक कमिटी बना देते हैं 6-7 महीने 1 साल के लिए कुछ काम करते हैं, and then it is forgotten. I wish it happens. It will actually be really useful to not only understand the reason but also share it with the industry professionals so that such mistakes can be avoided in future.
Right.
Then VP Swaroop from PWD has said something retrofitting of our.
Retrofitting of RCC buildings.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that.
Yeah, it is covered. Yeah.
Then Arun Kumar Mariappan from Mumbai says in structural welded connection under seismic resistant design, is it mandatory to go with CJP welding? What is CJP welding, Bhavin?
Yeah, it's a complete joint penetration. So it's a butt welding, complete
Okay.
joint penetration welding. So now section 12 of IS 800-2000 says very clearly that all uh, welding joint shall be considered as a CJP, or let's say butt welded joint.
Okay. So there you have your answer, Arun. Then we also must note that in seismic zones, we have to carry out a ductile detailing of all joints, even for steel structures. Now, guidelines are available in Indian codes, and we have to follow the same. Then Faizan has asked about structural assessment audit. We've talked about it. Balachandra Patel has said retrofitting. We've talked about it. Sivaraman Rajendran from Riyadh says use of latest materials for seismic retrofit. Yes, we can look at all the materials available for seismic retrofit. Some of the newer materials like carbon fiber and other similar fibers are available for wrapping around the columns and beams. However, we must note that every technology will have its limitation, especially with fiber wrapping. Uh, the vendor may not tell you, or the FRP contractor may not tell you, but the fiber wrapping has a limitation of not enhancing more than 50% load capacity and not more than 30% in the moment carrying capacity. So when we are selecting the retrofitting technology, we have to keep this limitation in mind while selecting it. अब अगर मेरे कॉलम में 400 किलो न्यूटन लोड आ रहा है और वो 200 किलो न्यूटन लोड के लिए डिजाइंड है, and if I have to enhance it by 100%, then fiber wrapping is not going to help. It'll have a very, very limited applicability here. So Pranav says convenient and cost saving methods. Pranav from Pune. We've already talked about this, boss. Convenient and cost saving is all with reference to a particular client, a particular project, a particular location, and the function that the building is being used for, and the kind of structural deficit that you have in strength and demand. So we also have Dr. Subramaniam. Wow. He has a question how to safeguard stilted elevated metro stations which have extreme mass and stiffness irregularity against earthquakes. So I have been raising this question in almost all my talks in the past, God knows how many years. I know these stations need to be reviewed, especially after 2016 codes came in. I had personally gone to DMRC and tried to meet their director and they have a CGM designs. But उनको मैंने एक्सप्लेन किया था प्रॉब्लम, ऑफर भी किया था कि एक पर्टिकुलर लाइन के लिए एक स्टेशन, दो स्टेशन, चार स्टेशन आप इवैल्यूएट करके देखिए कि कितना फर्क आता है. We know why it is important, but I can briefly tell my friends in the audience that if you recall, the 2002 version of our code had okay, sorry, you don't understand Hindi. I can. I have a very bad habit of switching over to English or Hindi or Punjabi sometimes. So the basic problem now is that unlike the code of 2002, which had a provision of designing stilted columns and beams for 2.5 times the earthquake load. Now that clause had been withdrawn in 2016 version, and for stilted buildings and soft story floors, we need to uh, we need to add either shear walls or we need to add some bracings. So these two options are available, and I think elevated metro stations also, they will have to eventually do that. I hope the good sense will prevail and they will investigate and they will get the retrofitting done. Then there is Dr. Said Kaleem Zedi from AMU. He says, learned more about the recent activities and necessary information. I don't know. I don't understand whether you are asking or making a statement.
Yes, he just wants to know about recent updates. Yeah. Okay, so that's what we're
So
talking about.
recent activities, it's just this that we are trying to assimilate the lessons learned from Turkey and Syria and try and upgrade our codes. Very soon you will see a new revision of 1893 Part 1. And in fact, Part 2 will also be coming now for buildings. So we are trying to do something in the BIS code committee to make things safer for the buildings, but you are going to definitely see a change. Then we have Santosh for asking for retrofitting from Pune. We've talked about it. Shailesh Krishna Rao Atkari from AFCONS from Kalyan. He says, please elaborate structural condition assessment to select methodology for retrofitting. I think we've done that. See, I have covered not only the audit procedure, but also the NDT techniques and retrofitting. If there are questions, you can please come back to me because in a limited time frame, it's difficult to go into too much detail. And I'll be happy to answer any follow-up questions later. So, Chirag Rajgor from Mundra says, does it regain the same strength? No. I don't think so, but yes, we can upgrade the strength to a desired level, if not through conventional retrofitting techniques. But let's say somebody has designed a building with collapse prevention and wants to take it to operational level, why not? We can do that, but we may have to use dampers and may also have to use base isolation systems. I think the problem defines what strategy we should be using for retrofitting. We can't prescribe one treatment for all diseases. Okay. So the audit is the diagnosis and retrofit is the treatment. So the treatment has to be based on the diagnosis. First, the correct diagnosis has to be done. Then I think I'll skip next questions from Shailesh Krishna Rao, Chirag Rajgor, Tirupati Siddharaman. How to review the existing structure of the building, owners not aware structural design needs. That is the usual problem. That's what I've said in the beginning, Tirupati ji, that most people, 90% of building owners in India are not aware of what a structural engineer does and what a structural design is all about, and how is an audit important. What does the frequent audit help a structure? How does it help it? People are not aware, but that is why the clauses in National Building Code were added to make people aware. It's the job of the local authorities to make clients aware that yes, there is a need to go for a audit, frequent audit. Every 3 to 5 years, an audit is mandatory. So Rajan Dharia says from Surat, what was the major reason of such a major damage? I hope he is referring to Turkey, the major damages that happened in Turkey. Is that your question, Rajan?
Yes, I
I've
think so.
already said that the major damages happened due to non-compliance mainly and irregular building geometries. You may have seen from the images or pictures or videos that came in that failures happened, crushing the stilt floors completely. And the buildings came down in a matter of seconds. And the lower story or the stilt floor was completely crushed. And even precast buildings got damaged. So that is why our codes are still talking about cast in situ buildings in earthquake zones being the preferred choice, and regular geometries are a must. I hope all of you are aware that there is a clause, there is a very elaborate set of clauses in IS 1893 Part 1 and now also in 2 about the irregularity of a structure. It has been defined very clearly, and a lot of care and thought has gone into it in defining various limits of irregularity. And if irregular, how has the building to be treated? That has also been given. So please go through that and try and design regular buildings when you're working in seismic zones 3, 4, and 5. So Kishore Gowda from Bangalore says, any codes available for retrofit design and detail? Any available literature source about retrofitting? Yes, I think there is a lot of information, technical literature available, including the BIS codes that I just talked about. Uh, Other than 15988, there are a series of codes like I think 15935 and 4326 initially for masonry structures, and for retrofitting, yes, I remember from CPWD, Mr. Arun Sharma had written a book, and similarly, there are plenty of good books available on this subject. And I think more codes are likely to come as we go into more revisions. Even 13920 will now be having a series like 1893 for different types of building structures. So you will get to see more literature about earthquake resistant design and about retrofitting. And Mr. Abdul Kalam says from Riyadh, how to damage estimation. limit of retrofitting. See, I'm saying all this is case specific. You cannot frame a set of rules for all buildings. These have to be case specific. Your solution has to be decided based on your problem. Whether the client has a budget for very advanced systems like dampers. You're sitting in Riyadh, maybe your client can afford dampers and will be happy if you install some fancy dampers and base isolation systems. But if you're doing an individual housing society or any individual's residence or something in Delhi, maybe people will shy away from the cost. So it all is project specific. We can't frame one rule for all the buildings. Bhavin, please help me with Divya's question. I can't read it from my slide.
Yeah, she says durability of retrofitted structures.
Well, the durability of retrofitted structures, I don't think we can put it in terms of number of years, but yes, it does enhance the life of the structure. And as I said earlier, we can design the retrofit to suit to a particular level that you want. If you want a life safety level, it's easier from collapse prevention. But if you want to go to immediate occupancy or even higher level of operational earthquake resistance, then you have to spend more money and go with more advanced systems.
Okay,
I've
Gulam.
already talked about soft story, Ghulam Muhammad ji,
Yeah.
and I think uh, what is his question? The whole of
Yeah,
it
so
I've
what he says
answered.
that soft story is there in almost all residential apartments. So he says that these buildings should have structural audit mandatory and retrofitting measures should be identified.
Well, the good news is that the audit is mandatory as per NBC every 3 to 5 years. But the bad news is that there are very, very few people in India who bother to read the code and follow it, especially among our so-called educated government departments like local authorities. The less said about it, the better. I'm sorry on a platform like this. I shouldn't be talking like this, but unfortunately, most government departments are still unaware that there is a clause or there is a chapter written in NBC already many, many years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, that audit is mandatory every 3 to 5 years. If we do it diligently, I think our building failures and building damages can be uh, minimized to a negligible number or even to zero. And stills are made mandatory, in a typical, if I'm planning a new house in Delhi, I can't get my plans approved unless I go in with stills. Now these are mandatory. So unfortunately for us, client does not concern himself with structural design requirements so much. He's more worried about the functional requirements and the aesthetics and other, parking facilities and all that. So structural design is not his only concern. So sometimes these provisions come into bylaws which have adverse impact on the structural performance, but we have to live with it. And now our code has come up with the requirement or the suggestions that we can add bracings or we can add RC walls as written by you. So this can be done. This should be done in all housing societies where stills are there. So Tamil Tamil Selvan from Chidambaram, he says retrofitting clarification, but he hasn't written what clarification he wants. Then Ramya says details about retrofitting using ETABS.
ETABS.
So it is possible to model the structural elements with a jacket, and ETABS permits you to do that. So if you have a problem, you can contact ETABS vendor. They are very, very helpful. They respond immediately with any technical queries. You can connect with them. And if it still doesn't get solved, you can connect with me. Okay. Then Shivang says how to seismic vulnerability assessment of building. We've already talked about this. Anuj Arya, how could we take up making the existing building earthquake safe? Bhai, this is what the today's webinar is all about. We've already talked about this. And Rutul says earthquake resistance in steel structures. So, well, resistance in steel structures is as important as it is for concrete buildings, and we need to make an assessment and find the deficit here as well and strengthen it. We can add steel plates, we can add angles, we can add channels. There are lots of ways of making amends to the earlier mistakes, or we can add bracings. So there are a number of options available. Then Lembe Sunil Shivaj from Satara says retrofitting of RCC elements in seismic zone 4. We've already talked about it. Then what is Manohar's question, Bhavi?
Yeah, he says how far these techniques are effective in mitigating earthquake damage to buildings in old structures designed with code provisions previous to 2002.
Well, I think we have not carried out any such extensive research as to how much, in terms of percentage, is the effectiveness, in mitigating earthquake. वो तो earthquake, when it really happens, only then probably we'll get to know what is the effect. But definitely it adds to the overall performance in earthquake and also adds useful life to your structure. All of us must understand that a building has a design life of 50 years as we design it based on Indian codes. It is the understanding that we go with. But in India, we tend to continue with a building. We just keep on dragging a bad structure for sentimental reasons, for commercial reasons, or whatever. But if we retrofit it sensibly, I think we will easily be adding at least 10 to 15 years to its life. So Ranu Chauhan says how to make the retrofitting of houses as a owner-driven approach. I don't think I can help here. See, basically, I think when we buy a car, an expensive car, we love to maintain it. And when we buy a house, we somehow think that safety of the house is the developer's prerogative or the government's prerogative. It doesn't happen like that. A building is an investment that you made consciously, and maintaining it in the best structural health is also your prerogative. So, as an owner, you have to take a conscious decision. Unfortunately, in India, our we don't place enough value on our own life or on our family's life, and we take it very casually. We are very chalta hai attitude. You're a Delhi wala, so you will understand. In Delhi, typically, sab chalta hai wala attitude hai, which is not a good approach. Then Rais Ahmed Bhatt says retrofitting of existing masonry structures in zone 5. In zone 5, masonry structures are not recommended in 4326. In zone 4, also masonry structures are allowed only up to 3 floors. And that too when they are detailed and designed accordingly. The vertical reinforcement is provided as prescribed, horizontal bands are given as prescribed, and placing of openings, the placement of openings is planned as per the codal provision. Only then, we should be talking about masonry structures. We have done some work on existing masonry structures in Zone 5 when we were working on this NDMA project, but it was very challenging. And unfortunately, the techniques available for retrofitting a masonry structure is still very crude. It is just you go on providing those bands, the reinforcements or steel strips. Um, you may do some pressure grouting wherever you find, the integrity is poor or the strength of masonry or the strength of mortar is poor. But there are very limited options unless you want to go in for bracings or dampers. Similarly, Anadi Kulkarni has asked seismic assessment guidelines in India on the lines of ASC 41. We are shortly coming up with a code for post disaster assessment of structures. I don't know whether you have that in mind or not. I hope I have answered your question. You will be soon getting a code for post disaster assessment of buildings. Uh, I hope that helps. Arvind Salecha, design method for retrofitting with FRP. Yes, there is a software available with the FRP vendors, and if you're a structural engineer, you can ask them to load it in your system. You can design it yourself and check how many wraps are you allowed to use in a column or a beam, and then you can check whether FRP is really helping you or not. And you have to also compare the price with a conventional retrofitting method. But FRP has definitely a limited enhancement capability. Types of retrofitting and its remedial measures we've already talked about. Then I see Vatsal Shukla has come up with a question. He's from Ahmedabad.
I think same
How
thing what we
effectively the mandate of, yeah, we've already talked about this. So, see, question about owners, I can't answer because, it's an individual choice. If you're buying a car, you can either buy a Maruti or you can buy a Toyota or you can buy a Porsche or uh, Gloucester or Fortuner. It all depends on how much value you place on your own safety and your own comfort and your own life. So I think maintenance of a building has to come from the owner and not from the government. Government is not supposed to come and maintain my house. I have to take full responsibility if tomorrow something happens to the building structure for want of proper maintenance. Um, but we are trying to, in our own limited manner, trying to educate owners. We keep doing podcasts and lectures and similar stuff. But there is only that much we can do. Owners have to wake up, and somebody has to wake them up. So it'll be nice if she can throw some light on how seismic retrofit of buildings using dampers is carried out. That has come from Abhinav Vardhan. Abhinav, I can't answer this question. I can only tell you that you have to, using dampers in a project is a very useful but highly iterative process. It's a hit and trial kind of a thing. You have to start by placing dampers in, let's say, every alternate or every second alternate bay in on the periphery, and let's say on every second alternate floor in a building, and see if your building improves in performance and if you get the desired objective. What we are trying to do here is to enhance the damping of a building structure by using dampers, but the percentage damping allowed will be dictated by the product that you're using. And unfortunately, till now, dampers in India are not being manufactured. I think under Make in India campaign, Bhavin, you should probably spearhead a movement that people should start making it in India. But unfortunately, this particular product comes from abroad, maybe from Taiwan, from Germany, from US, or from some such country, and they will tell you what is the capacity of a damper that you can get and what is the percentage damping that you can be allowed to use in your structure. And then you run the model and see how well are we meeting the objective, and where are the hinges formed, have we achieved the objective that we started with. I hope I've answered Abhinav's question. And then we have Krunal Ninave. How do we strengthen existing foundation, column beam of old building? Existing foundation ko strengthen karna is not very easy. It is challenging because you have to break open the plinth floor at that level, reach the foundation, and you will have to either remove, on the periphery of the foundation, remove about at least a feet of concrete, tie the new reinforcement bars with the old bars, and extend the size of foundation. Or if you want to add depth to the existing foundation, you may have to use rebarring techniques to add new reinforcement to the column, and then pour concrete after putting shuttering on the edge. But strengthening existing foundations is a very, very challenging task, and most clients will not allow you to do it, uh, especially if the building is functional. Arihan Jain says discussion on awareness of having all new structures to be compulsorily earthquake resistant. Arihant, I have to tell you, Arihant from Jalgaon, that the code in India has given excellent guidelines. As structural engineers, it is upon us to follow them and make building structures which are earthquake resistant. Nobody is stopping you from doing a good code compliant design. I think our codes are, if not the best in the world, but they are pretty decently framed. And all structural engineers must follow it and make buildings earthquake resistant wherever, depending on whichever zone the structure is in. Also, can you suggest if structures below 9 meter required to be compliant with earthquake codal provisions? Oh my God. Have you forgotten what happened in Bhuj in 2002, Arihant? We lost lives mostly in single and double storied houses. So these were mostly unengineered or non engineered structures, and that was responsible for the largest loss of life. So it is definitely important to make all structures earthquake resistant, whether less than 9 meter or more than 9 meter, or even more than 90 or 100 or 150 meters. Bhavin Bhagat from Baroda says, what are the basic points that must be followed during retrofitting along with approx cost applicable in this process? Nobody can give you a costing. I have already told you a solution has to be specific to the project. You cannot have ballpark numbers or you can't have approximate costs being given to you. Who's going to give you the cost? You have to first find out the deficit in strength. Only then you will come up with a retrofitting scheme yourself, and then you can call any contractor and get the costing done. I don't think it is possible for me to give you any costing or give you any retrofitting technique which is suitable to all your projects. It's not possible. You can do concrete jacketing, you can do steel jacketing, you can add bracings if the client agrees to bracings, or you can add shear walls. It's your choice. Or do fiber wrapping. Jagdish from Bangalore says discuss the original RC members minimum grade of concrete required for proposed strengthening work. It all depends on your requirement, boss. Minimum grade of concrete is anyway M25 as per IS 456 now. And you can go in for a higher mix of concrete for jacketing. Uh, and you can try with M25. If it doesn't work, go to M30 or M35 or M40. So there is no minimum grade prescribed, but in any case, you can't go below M25. So Rajnikant from Bangalore, he says very first question comes to mind: how to assess, evaluate, quantify the current remaining capacity of existing structure in terms of behavioral parameters like flow drift, total sway, base shear resistance in substructure, and then to assess the needed retrofitting. See, when you're modeling, you will get everything, all this information. In any case, you are supposed to check whether you're meeting the drift requirement or not. So there is no problem about all the queries that you raised. What we are doing is we are modeling the building, and we are finding out the deficit, and then we also model the retrofitted building, and then we make sure that the desired objective of retrofitting is being met with. I don't know if all consultants do this as a rule, but we do it as a rule that we audit a building, we decide the retrofitting depending on the deficit, and then we also model the retrofitted building and check the drift, the sway, the base shear resistance, everything. I think all of us should do it. Then Kamal Kannan from Chennai says, is there a specific code for steel structures in India? Oh my God, we have IS 800. Yes, of course, we have a code in India for steel structures. Then there is Sarvanan from Advanced Data Products. I haven't understood any question. Bhavin, did he have a question?
He says, no, he is just, he doesn't have any question. He just wants to join the session.
Okay. I think, have we exceeded the time? We're nearly close to 6.
Okay. Yeah. So you can pick up 2, 3 points before we close.
Yeah, I think most of the questions that people had been covered. But there is something which I see here about performance of column and beam joint strength complying 8093 code.
Hmm.
I don't think we have a field test available for checking the beam joint strength, column and beam joint strength. No, I not to the best of my knowledge, and I don't for once claim that I know everything. I'm also a practitioner like all of you. So I also don't know everything. Bhavin, do you have any idea about this?
No, there is no full scale taste, in my opinion, this time.
Yeah, I don't think so too. In current situation for which structures we compulsorily consider earthquake resistant, see, only Abhijit from Mumbai. We should always consider earthquake resistant design of structures, even if you are in zone 2. Why? Because for important structures where the importance factor is 1.5, your structure becomes, your zone becomes zone 3 because your earthquake shear goes up, and you should in any case make ductile detailing mandatory for all the buildings you're designing, because let's not forget the major earthquakes that we remember in that have happened in our lifespan, like Killary and Latur and even Ahmedabad. They were not zone 4 or 5. Ahmedabad was zone 3. I think Latur and Killary were not even zone 3. So let's not take it lightly. The matter becomes more serious when we are doing important structures like metros or train stations or communication buildings or public buildings where importance factor is much higher. So, retrofitting of steel composite structures, Shiva Kumar Patil says. Steel composite structures retrofitting is a bit dicey. I don't think we have enough literature available. But since it is a new technology relatively, so I think retrofitting may not be necessary in steel composite structures as of now.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think we have any data on this. It's possible to model it, but either you will have to model it like a steel structure if you think it's a predominantly steel column, steel beam, and composite floor structure. Then you can simply model the steel structure and check for earthquake, or uh, and use a stiffness which you can derive uh, using some formulae for the floor. Or if you think the columns are encased, still I think you should use column only, because encasing usually is not considered for strength purposes. But I don't think I have any data to share about retrofitting of steel composite structures as yet. We've retrofitted steel buildings, we've retrofitted concrete buildings, but as of now, we've not done any retrofitting of steel composite structures. भाविन आप कुछ ऐड करना चाहें तो कर सकते हैं quickly
Yeah,
before we go on.
absolutely right. This will be a
And
new
then Bapu Gowda from Hubli says performance-based seismic design on retrofitting of structures and identification of performance points in retrofitting of structures. Yes, you model the retrofitted building and check where are the hinges forming. You can go up to immediate occupancy level as we had done in ETAB's ultimate version. It's possible to do it. Then Kundan Singh, his question is rather lamba.
Yeah, a five-story building in a coastal area, Mumbai, has been left incomplete at four-story since 2018, and now contractor has run away. There is heavy corrosion in rebars and spalling of concrete has taken place at many places. Some RCC chhajjas are also fallen down, and there are cracks visible at beams locations at roof slabs. Tension cracks are visible. Structural audit was carried out, and one audit recommended for demolition of the structure. Another audit recommended retrofitting with chemical treatment. So,
I think the person who recommended demolition must have been a consultant, and the person who's recommending retrofitting with chemicals must be a chemical vendor, because clients often confuse and they normally call vendors directly, and any vendor who has a chemical to sell will try and sell it to the client, poor helpless client. But if the corrosion has happened so much and it's extensive corrosion, I really don't think you should continue with the structure. It's always better to bear some loss now, demolish and reconstruct, and make sure that corrosion doesn't happen. Use water which is safe for construction and not very high in chlorides or sulfates. Uh, I think it's important to. Corrosion is like cancer. If you're already at stage 4 cancer, then it's better that the building should be demolished and reconstructed. It's not possible in India. Still, we do not have a proven treatment for corrosion. Only thing you can do is maybe clean it up, use some chemical for reinforcement, but then for structure which is already cast, how do you reach the reinforcement? The chemical will not be able to reach the periphery of every reinforcement bar. So there is no point. It is only for your satisfaction that, okay, you've got the treatment done and you can go ahead and build the rest of the building. It might come falling down, crashing down someday. Not a good idea. That's it.
Okay, so there are several points which have come through the live chat also. So
Okay.
we can request them to maybe write to you separately, or they may contact me separately, and then I can send those questions to you.
Of course.
Yeah,
I'll just show the screen once again. They can note down my email ID if they want to.
that is a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think everybody can see these two email IDs for me. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, any further questions or follow up questions, or any questions that we have missed out on. And I'll be happy to share whatever little knowledge we have gained so far.
Yeah. So one
Thank
question,
you
if we
very much.
can, so one question, if we can take up from Dr.
Yeah.
Subramanian. So he says the FRP sheets used for retrofitting have resins. Will they have long life? In addition, some people have expressed doubts about the anchoring of these sheets.
See, personally, Dr. Subramaniam, I agree with you. The FRP sheets will will definitely have problems because they may come out, and the sticking of one wrap on the other is not foolproof normally, unless it's executed by a trained vendor. So what most good vendors are doing, like Sika and other BASF and all, they have trained vendors, and only those vendors are being entrusted with such assignments. However, I have a feeling that unless protective plaster is put on top of the FRP sheets, these FRP sheets are not fireproof. So they have very low fire resistance and may not have the desired fire rating as per the required norms these
Yes.
days. And I can't read the last line. It says people have expressed doubts about the
Anchoring of the sheets.
anchoring of these sheets. Yes, I agree with you. In fact, the execution of FRP wrapping has to be done only by trained people, and you can't leave it to your normal brick and mortar guy to do this kind of work. It has to be done by trained vendors. And anyway, I think I know for sure that there is a limited enhancement capacity, especially for buildings in zone 4 and 5, where more than the axial load, your columns may have problem in the enhancement requirement of the moment carrying capacity because the base shear is now being increased. You're adding the vertical load component also 30%, and your importance factor has gone up for residential and commercial developments with 200 and more occupancy. So we end up with higher moments in columns, and FRP can't take care of that. You can't enhance by 25, more than 25 to 30%. So applicability is also very limited. So all those clients who actually call FRP vendors and not hire a suitable structural consultants end up spending more money and still do not get the desired performance after retrofitting.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So thanks a lot. So people are appreciating the session. They're telling thanks for sharing the knowledge.
Thank you very much, Bhavin. Thank you for
Most welcome.
giving me this chance to be with all of
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
Bye bye. And I'll be happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Yeah,
Thank
surely. So
you.
if there are any additional points, you can direct the email to
Sure.
the address which was just flashed on the screen. Okay, so with this,
Sure.
we are closing this session now, and we'll be meeting soon again with a very interesting session. Okay, and thanks a lot again, Sangeeta ji, for this.
Thank you, Bhavin. Bye bye.
Thank you. Yeah, most welcome. Bye.
Bye.